Hi everyone. So let's talk about three things that INFJs say in conversation with others, whether it's a debate or some other kind of conversations where the INFJ at some level is solicited. Like they are expected to provide some kind of input, some kind of response, some kind of reaction. And the way that they do, which is a very INFJ way a lot of the time, is likely to frustrate the other party. And I think that once I start covering these three modes of conversation, it will appear evident why they can be, right? And this is certainly something that happens to me a lot, and other INFJs that I know have related to related the same experiences basically. So the number one thing that we can start with, but it's not in order of importance, they're all equally important, is when an INFJ, you're talking to an INFJ and you're telling them something and you're expecting a response from them. So for example, you're making an argument or you're expressing a particular opinion, and implicit in that articulation is your expectation that the INFJ will confirm it, right? Agree, basically, right? Or even potentially disagree, but not say this, which is what they often say, is, well, before I can answer this, I need more context. Or just, I need more context. I need to see the bigger picture. Or, which is really the equivalent to say, well, I need to think before I answer you. Like, this is too complex it's too complex to be addressed very quickly and in a sort of burst type response where you just respond and move on. So that's frustrating to the other person, because often the other person considers that, first of all, maybe they, at some emotional level, in fact, they might need confirmation, or maybe they just think they've made a good argument and provided sufficient context. But it's hard to overestimate just how much context INFJs tend to need. I mean, of course, if the INFJ is already very familiar with the particular subject area, subject matter, the topic at hand, they will be much more likely to respond quickly. But if they are not, they will want to approach the entire thing holistically and make sure that they understand how the different moving parts work together. This is not just that INFJs tend to be perfectionistic in how they approach something, because I don't think that INFJs are necessarily more perfectionistic than other types, or at least than a lot of other types, such as, for example, TI dominance. But they are holistic. They are holistic. It's just the way their mind works. They have holistic minds. I say this all the time, which means that before they can take a position on a particular issue, they need to see how their taking up of that position is coherently articulated with all the other positions that they otherwise hold, right? And that can take time. And that's why you can never provide enough context. Of course, there's a point where sufficient context is provided, but the threshold for enough context, as far as INFJs are concerned, is higher than it is for most other types. Now, the second thing that an INFJ might tell you in response to something you say that is bound to annoy you quite a bit as well, or can frustrate you, is so basically the INFJ might tell you, well, I know what I want to say, but I can't answer you straight away because I don't know how to put it in words. That can be even more infuriating, and I've certainly experienced that and noticed that it can be really, really infuriating, at least for some people, is when an INFJ says, I disagree with you, but I can't really articulate it now. I just know I disagree, I know why this is wrong, but I don't know how to articulate it in words. I just know that. So that's obviously very annoying to the other person a lot of the time, because the other person, first of all, made, put some effort into kind of, stringing together their points, and people don't like to be dismissed, and like it even less when the explanation for the dismissal of the view is not forthcoming. Now, for 9AJ, it's kind of natural for them to say that they know something, they can take position on something without being able to articulate it. This has to do with the partial linguistic inscrutability of the NI world, where the INFJ reaches their conclusions, essentially, which is the repository of archetypal contents that, in interaction with the external reality, including input from other people, conclusions are drawn that are often in the language, in a symbolic language that really takes a lot of effort to be able to articulate in basically according to the standards of I was going to say Western reason, but the standards of transparent reasoning. It's specific to the INFJ. It's part of what makes INFJ geniuses too, by the way, that they can divine things symbolically, but it can be very frustrating if you're having a conversation and someone tells you, I can't quite articulate what I mean because the words fail me, essentially. So now INFJ subtypes come into the picture here, of course, as well. So if you're an adaptive submissive INFJ, you're more likely to say, well, I'm not sure about this. I just need to think about it more. So almost like more like taking the first position because they don't dare to quite disagree straight away. Whereas a solipsistic INFJ might just give you, the phrasing that I gave, which is, I disagree, but I can't quite put it in words. I just know this is not true. So yeah, frustrating. Now the last particular item of language that INFJs have recourse to that can be very frustrating and annoying to other people, and I want to address here. There's more, of course, but these three came to mind as quite prevalent. It's not really to do with arguments. It's to do with conversations in general, and sometimes it can be something even more prosaic, as like wanting an INFJ to commit to a particular event or to know if they will be meeting with you tomorrow or a couple of days' time. It can also be asking them for an opinion on something, for sure, or what they think of something you did, something you produced, created, like an article, a book, a piece of music. It could be anything really, but INFJ is more than the average person, for sure, average non-INFJ person, will often say, well, I'll get back to you on this. And they often don't. Some do, and it can surprise other people, because by the time they get back to them, it might be a few weeks later, sometimes months later, and the person's like, wow, I thought you never get back to me, or I forgot about this thing, and now I'm reminded of it by yourself because you're getting back to me only now. How did that stay in your mind? So that can happen, but also sometimes the INFJ doesn't get back to the other person at all. Now, sometimes the INFJ themselves end up forgetting, or they just continue thinking about the particular thing, right, that we're considering, if, for example, there was an argument presented to them. If they don't quite reach a conclusion, they just won't follow up because they see this as an ongoing process that NI is going to resolve at some point. They don't necessarily think that they have to bring TI and FE and other functions into the fray, like sort of make them work to solve the issue. They know that NI can do that by itself, but it needs time, and sometimes it needs a lot of time, and sometimes it doesn't resolve the issue. People who don't function that way can be annoyed by that, and understandably, but you just got to understand how INFJs work too. Okay, so that was for the three things that INFJs say that annoy people. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, if you have other things that you want to mention, if you're an INFJ or someone who interacts with INFJs regularly and you've been in those positions. Also, don't forget that I have written 2 books on the INFJ. They come together. The Ecstatic Soul is my book on the mind of the INFJ and investigation of INFJ consciousness, the deepest you'll find. It's available below, as well as the Infinite Soul, which is my more recent book, a sequel to the Ecstatic Soul. It looks at INFJ life in the modern world, as the title indicates, finding INFJ happiness, contentment with life in a world that often is seen as hostile. Right, so it's about how the INFJ interacts with the world today and can find joy in the world. Drop a review, please, if you love the book and haven't reviewed it yet. Helps with the referencing. And don't forget, my Patreon page is the lifeblood of this channel. The way that I keep going, producing content, it depends also on your support, on your donations, generous donations. On Patreon, you can also interact with me, make suggestions for new content. You get access to bonus material from time to time. It's mostly to really support what I do and help me keep going with this channel. So I'd be so grateful. Consider it. The link is below, and I'll talk to you next time, guys. Bye-bye.